In esports, teams and players are judged by two separate yet equally important groups. The fans with their unconditional support or hatred, and the analysts with their delusional idea of being able to make sense of it all. These are their stories.
And with that, welcome to the Zone Control Podcast. My name's Louis. Next to me is Sin once again. We'll have guests soon, but for this one, we're still just two people. So,
yeah, wrapping up the MSI storylines here. Of course, we just saw the finals, RNG versus Kingzone on the other day. So it's going to be on the topics today. Also, going to be talking about Bruiser item changes, some news going on from the Chinese rosters. There's been some exciting developments through.
Fair enough. So let's start with MSI. Start with the first semi-finals. We had Fnatic going up against RNG.
Yeah.
And, I guess we'll talk about Fnatic a bit now, because RNG will have their spotlight later on in the tournament.
Yeah, we can talk about the finals as a comparison to this perfectly, but we'll talk about the finals later. But right now, it's Fnatic. They came out of every early game with a really solid advantage against RNG. They managed to get really good advantages off of the back of Broxer and Caps playing well. Zhao, who didn't really have as much of an impact as Caps did in these games. But at the same time, when you're going down 50, 60, 70 CS in the bot lane consistently, it's really hard to make up for. And when it gets to that late game stage, it's really RNG just forcing them to play their playstyle, and RNG just goes, okay, we're taking a fight here, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to lose this fight because Uzi is just going to mechanically outplay every single person in your team.
Yeah.
That's just going to happen.
And the way I see how Fnatic did in the early game, they struggled. They had some really scrappy plays, but they always tried to dictate the pace of the game, and I think they did relatively well, especially compared to Kingzone later. So they were just able to get to the point where they were ahead out of the early game. Didn't manage to follow through, but it worked better than expected.
So it ended up being in all three games in the bot lane I want to focus on right now. The Caitlyn versus Ezreal match. That's not an awful matchup for the Ezreal, especially when the Ezreal has a Janna with him as he did in one game, a Braum with him, and then a Tahm Kench. It's like, that's free lanes for you to be able to CS and scale up. And Ezreal should be able to do that. In games 1 and 2, he really, really struggled to do anything to Uzi. In game 3, finally they managed to get some gank spot lane, they got some good pressure. He managed to get an advantage, and later on in the game he did get a pentakill in one of these team fights, but it didn't matter. It was already too late into the game. They couldn't push out when they had two inhibitors already down. They couldn't take back control of the game. Every single time they wanted to push a fight outside their own base, RNG just seemed to have full control. They always knew how to play these fights so perfectly, and a lot of it came down to Ming, who was so perfect on his engages and disengages, and he was able to facilitate Uzi that much better.
Yeah, and what kind of happened throughout the series is kind of the breakdown of communication on the side of Fnatic. They looked relatively awful in that department, especially in the later stages of the game. I think during skirmishes they did relatively well, although they, in my opinion, played a lot of intuition and everybody doing what they would do without any shots being called.
Yeah.
It
really seemed like, we talked about this a little bit before, but it really seems like they had a new shot caller. And potentially that shot caller is now Caps in the mid lane trying to remove that role from Reckless, but even so, Reckless is now performing worse than he was anyway, so is it really having that much of a positive impact?
Yeah, it kind of felt like to me Caps wanted to show that he can carry. It kind of looked like everybody agreed we can't just win MSI with just Reckless carrying. We have to have more forces coming through. And Caps picked up the mantle and said, "Okay, I'm gonna do whatever I can. Let me call some shots here." Some of them were absolutely awful. Some of them worked out quite well. It was always very aggressive. Always looked kind of nice.
That's the Caps way.
Yeah. The other real big criticism I have against it is it looked sometimes like he was just during the Marin, went to the Marin school of shot calling, where it's just, okay, we're playing out around me, commit.
Yeah, it's One of the things I really liked, though, was in the group stage where they pulled out the Trundle plus Yasuo combo and they were willing to just make plays at will, chase somebody down a lane, constantly go in. But the thing is, you can't just go, okay, we're making the proactive play, so we're going to win. You can't just go aggressive every time and expect that to work out. And that was the issue that really arose for Caps, where he kept on going a little bit too aggressive. In one game, I believe he went 0-5 as Talia, because he just kept pushing that little bit too far. Really wanted to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. So overall, Fnatic, I said it I think last podcast already. They look really interesting now. I do want to see them doing well in the US.
I think Caps can carry it EU, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Question is, who's actually gonna be there to challenge them? Because like you couldn't even challenge them when it was just Reckless carrying.
Yeah.
So.
And even when they had Soaz in the top lane, they switched them out for Bwipo and they still couldn't top them at all.
Yeah.
And that's something I do want to talk about in this tournament with Bwipo coming through. Obviously having to come in for Soaz because Soaz had surgery due. Soaz played one game before he went off and had that surgery. Yeah. So he went 0-0-7. It wasn't really a brilliant game, but it was nice to see him play in front of the European crowd and at least get some game time. But at the same time, Bwipo, he had a fairly good early stage of the groups and he played fairly well. He didn't really make many mistakes, even carried a couple games. But as the tournament went on, he got more and more shaky. He made more and more mistakes. If you look at like his game on Singed, where he made so many mistakes in the early game, he even nearly double Flame Horizoned his opponent, but it still felt like he had next to no impact on the game after those 4 deaths early.
It really felt like he was really good on certain champions. He was good on Sion, and he was good on Camille, because basically both of them give you a lot of free impact. Let's put it like that. Like Camille can escape quite easily out of a sideline, so you can just push out and then make plays to get out of something. There were other champions where he didn't do so hard on the Singed, for example. I mean, sure, never chase a Singed, fair enough, but if you're stuck in a bad position with Singed, you're not getting out of that one, no matter how many plays you make, you know?
Yeah, watching him get solo killed on Vladimir by a Sion in Game 1 in the semi-finals that was kind of rough, where you're just thinking, maybe Bwipo isn't playing so hard, and he admitted himself that he kind of choked this tournament.
Yeah.
You could really tell that he wasn't at the best of his level. Maybe the pressure was really getting to him. But think about the summer split coming up. Soaz is going to be returning potentially full time. I'd like to see Soaz back in the roster with another veteran shot caller in the team. Can they continue to develop on Caps? And can they continue to put more resources into him? Because Soaz, known for being on an island, having 0 resources dedicated to him and still being fine. Bwipo required a lot more. I'm going to go with babysitting, because he wasn't quite in the right position at the right time. He didn't always have the lane the way he wanted it. So Broxah had to put a lot more time there than maybe he would have wanted.
And I think the meta should suit him with the new changes coming through. We're going to talk about that a bit later.
Yeah.
Excited to see them in the EU. Moving over to the other semi-finals, we do have Flash Wolves versus Kingzone. So let's talk about the Flash Wolves here. An absolute, it's an overperformance to a ridiculous end from Flash Wolves. They showed up so well this tournament, representing the LMS to the fullest extent, and it's really kind of sad that they're stuck in the LMS.
As the tournament went on, Kingzone managed to find these clutch games where they just where they ended up pulling it out like they did in this series, and RNG just continued to ramp up more and more. Flash Wolves did kind of stagnate throughout the tournament. It seemed like everybody else just increased around them, and that 6-0 came. But they came into the tournament so well prepared. They managed to really understand what they wanted to do and execute on that, with Muujin's early games being so well done and getting that impact early to snowball into the late. You see Betty, who really struggled in the later stages of the tournament, really performed well in those early stages because he'd been given that much of a setup. But you saw in this series, Betty isn't really the AD carry you want to put on Kai'Sa. He played, I believe, three games of Kai'Sa and a game of Xayah. Xayah was fine. It's definitely a lot more safe ADC. We have that innate safety from the ultimate to be able to play around the Rakan as well, and you be late game scaling. But when you put him on a Kai'Sa, a mechanically intensive champion that he needs to be diving the backline with, and carrying games like an Uzi type player, like a Reckless, like a Double Lift, where you need to be that carry. Betty was not that player whatsoever, and I was saying this when we were watching it, and it really showed when they got to those late game team fights, and he was doing maybe half as much damage as Prey. It was really, really polarizing, the difference between the two AD carries. So they couldn't play around him needing to be that primary carry, and that's what they were able to do in the earlier stages where they didn't need him to be a primary carry. It's the way that kind of AD carry meta developed as the tournament went on, really built against Flash Wolves.
Yeah. I don't want to say though, like, I did predict Flash Wolves to win, I think, last time, and I did predict them to do very well. I did say that Kingzone had to bring Peanut to win this. I honestly, I could now take the laurels and say like, I said they needed Peanut. I'm right, but no, I didn't think that Kingzone would perform this well even with Peanut. They kind of stabilized themselves. They played some really good games sometimes not, but I think they performed much more to their standard in these semifinals.
But when you look to I want to look towards Peanut, and I felt like he didn't really have that much of an impact. The impact really came from the fact that they had BDD playing these impactful champions. You saw he got a solo kill on Aurelia. He started really performing, and he was like 1v1ing people. He was diving the backline and completely destroying people. And you put him on Talia, he's having this impact. It's when BDD was having that impact they looked stronger. And that's what we wanted for BDD the entire time. We thought he'd only really have the impact if he went back to the Galio or the Scion, but instead managing to find that on another champion, definitely really working for him. But they weren't able to play around that when they were up against RNG. Zhao, who was just able to play out the lane so safely. But Flash Wolves couldn't handle him. So you saw the games that they won. Like the games they lost the game on Yasuo, where he wasn't able to force anything because he was playing Yasuo, which is inherently a snowball champion. If you get ahead early, you just destroy the enemy team. If you don't get ahead early, you don't do anything. And then the other champion he played was Zoe, a champion that we've both agreed in the past really does nothing in competitive play right now. She can burst somebody down to half HP from a distance. She has no one to follow up on it because it's not a poke meta. I think if a poke meta comes back and you've got people like maybe a Lethality Varus or even just a Jace top lane coming through where he's going for the Muramana build, potentially you can get this to work. But right now, it's just not enough burst damage. You don't have that poke necessary. You don't have the zone control, roll credits, necessary to really impact the game to that degree.
Yeah. I think Zoe only really works into, like, Zoe really worked earlier this season when we had, like, the ridiculous comps that I will never forget and never stop criticizing.
But,
of like
siege compositions as well.
Had like these comps of like Gangplank, Gazir, Ezreal when nobody was able to actually get an engage on, and you just got poked out to shit.
But she worked so well in these siege compositions where she could just walk around, fire an E over the wall, and try and poke somebody out under their tower. Where essentially she worked like in Nidalee. But when you didn't have these siege compositions based around like a Caitlyn snowballing through the early game to be able to set up that mid lane siege where you just send all the members mid, she didn't work. She just doesn't work in that format, and you need to have that setup to really enable Zoe to be this impactful champion.
Yeah, and we had...
But I just don't like the Zoe pick, and it was Zoe and Yasuo that he lost the 2 games on in the semis. Without those, I honestly think that Kingzone would have had the impact necessary. Even though they did struggle in those early games, you got to look at how they struggled in the early games in the other parts of the series as well. But they still came back in the later stages because they were able to out-team fight Flash Wolves. Prey was out-damaging Betty. But in those games, it didn't matter because Xiaohu had that much of an advantage.
So, future of Flash Wolves. The LMS not really looking all too hot right now. We have like 2 teams who I think will be vying for the title, which are going to be...
G-Rex and Flash Wolves, yeah.
Because AHQ basically, first of all, lost all their players and all their drive as well.
Yep. Westor is inactive. Mountain has moved, and Ziv is rumored to be moving as well, which we'll go into later. But it's definitely AHQ have fallen off the map, and you have to be looking for like maybe Marchi 17 coming through to help supplement that, because there's just not that many teams who can challenge those top 2.
And I mean, we have seen surprises as well. Like G-Rex, just last season, were promoted to the LMS, came in as Raze Gaming, and immediately were a top tier threat. Honestly,
Yeah, they finished second in the regular season,
then
made it
third
to the
in-
playoff. Yeah, made it to the playoff semi, and then they lost. They
To
lost in the
AHQ.
regional qualifier to AHQ and didn't make it to Worlds.
Then they lost in the regional qualifier. They lost to Hong Kong Attitude.
Oh God, it's even worse.
It is.
Oh.
But yeah, just coming through. So the development of talent in this very small region, let's be real, is pretty
Yeah,
phenomenal.
Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan.
Yeah, that's like, what is that, like 10 million?
Yeah, something like that. But the thing is, if you look at it, it's 50% of the population or something has a League of Legends account in the area. It's ridiculous.
That's just
Uh,
dumb.
It's I think in Vietnam it's like 35% of the population has a League of Legends account, and in Korea it's about 25 to 30% have a League of Legends account.
It's just bigger.
Yeah, it's just that much bigger. So you've got relative to population, yeah, but at the same time you can still see the esports culture within these regions. Especially you can see isn't the World Esports Games that's going to be going on in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So they obviously support this kind of thing.
Yeah, gonna be. I do want to see the LMS do well. I hope that international teams will give them the scrims they need. I do
I mean,
think they
China's
have,
going to be scrimming them to scout the players and see which ones they want to pick up, but yeah.
China is such a predatory region
It's like,
sometimes.
oh wow, that guy really destroyed our mid laner this game. Let's make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah. There's a new team in Korea called how's it called again? Ever8?
Griffin? Yeah. Oh yeah, Ever8 got torn apart by.
Actually, no, it wasn't
vultures,
Ever8. It was Ever. It's ESC
ESC
Ever.
Ever.
They aren't even like.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing. They aren't even the same team.
Instantly, their mid laner who'd been performing well, Athena, got picked up as a sub for EDG. Didn't even play a game the
Get him
entire
out of
split. He
here.
was just a sub, which it was so annoying. It's like you see football teams do this all the time, where like initially when Manchester City picked up Raheem Sterling, he just sat on the bench the entire season after being the best player for Liverpool all the previous season. It's just like, I hate this kind of thing where you see a top team just go ahead and swipe up a big player just to have them be a bench warmer. I thought it was going to happen to Casa, so I'm really happy that he's now actually getting a lot of game time and he's getting to play for RNG. Now looking superior to MLXG as well.
Yeah. So let's jump into these finals.
Yeah.
Karsa, I think playing every game, right?
Casa did play every game. He played Skarner every game as well.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about it while we were watching. I was of the opinion that Karsa wouldn't perform that well on champions that aren't Skarner.
I disagreed with you. I thought the Skarner was just given to him because it's allows him to force fights. If you're on a Zac, it's a lot easier to deny that. You can pick a Janna, you can pick a Thresh, you can deny him that team fight engage. With a Skarner, it's that much harder because he gets that flash ult,
Yeah.
and you have to have QSS or you die.
Yeah. Skarner, a champion that some people told me for the tournament is dead. I never believed that because
Yeah.
well, for of course there are champions who out jungle him, can force fights, can basically counter jungle him to oblivion, but
Yeah.
he just
You-
has
you look
this
at the
innate
champions that-
impact.
You look at the champions who have come through to try and pressure out Skarner. It's Olaf, and it's
Oh, sorry.
I'm just a documents page now. Don't worry about me.
Yeah. I'm
You
sorry.
just
It's
just hiding my emails.
my
deleting them all.
my hard drive is getting full. I need to
No worries.
delete something.
So, like, you look at the way the plays went for RNG. You look at the jungler they played. They played Skarner every game. You look at those counters to Skarner. You've got Olaf coming through a lot. You've got Trundle coming through a lot. Those are the primary two that you'll
I'm
see.
sorry again.
Those are the primary two you'll try and see challenge him. They out clear speed him and they try and make an earlier impact. In this finals, Peanut did not have an early impact in any of the games. Peanut did not gank lanes early, he did not get advantages early in anything other than CS. It seemed like Casa was dominating the map in terms of vision, he was getting off more ganks, he was actually ended up keeping up in CS relatively, and he was able to stall the game out to the point where they could get those.
Yeah, and they were just playing RNG's game all throughout.
Yeah.
I do want to see a team that can actually like challenge that with individual play. Like theoretically, Kingzone should be that team, but
Yeah. But Kingzone's early game this tournament has been shoddy at best.
it kind of feels like to me, Kingzone have a giant problem with the fact that they have so many style players that none of them is compelled to really step up.
One of the problems for me is that it seems like Kingzone only wins when they have a priority bot lane that they can ignore. So Kingzone, when they've got Prey and Gorilla either winning or with a priority lane, they get to push in, they get to start sieging up the towers, and then you get that classic Kingzone 4-man dive where they all get out on a couple hundred HP at most, and they balance that tower dive so well. That's something they understand still so well, even at this tournament. But you look at the way it actually went, it was just Prey being pushed in every game. They have to gank bot lane repeatedly. Uzi still gets out every single time. And they couldn't get these advantages that they wanted. Peanut's not used to playing around bot lane. It's notorious that Prey and Gorilla get left on their own. This tournament, they weren't able to do that whatsoever. They had to focus hard on them. And that's really where Kingzone's play has fallen off dramatically.
Yeah.
But also, you have to look at Khan.
Yeah, just wanted to say that. Where is that Khan that like pushes in the wave and contests CS even under the enemy tower? I don't think it's there anymore, and I think one of the biggest reasons for that is I mean, he is not playing to his standards. That's fair, but I think ever since Peanut came into the roster, he just isn't. The map doesn't support that type of playstyle anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's not making plays on the other side of the map, trying to force the jungler away from top lane.
He made similar mistakes to Bwipo in the end. And it's rather interesting to compare the two because both of them ended up pushing too far, not understanding how aggressive they could be, and dying consistently. Look at that Alawi game, the final game. Absolutely awful from Khan. But it's just start off the series with game one. It was they did actually go for that split push composition where they had the Aurelia mid, they had the Fiora top. They wanted to play those side lanes.
Yeah.
They wanted to play the classic Kingzone setup where they have the 3-man unit able to survive. But RNG with like Sion, Skarner able to force constant fights and perfectly show how to play around a split push. You engage hard onto the remaining members. You force the team away from the side lane and force them to either lose 3 members and gain maybe a tower for it, or they have to back off of those side lanes to try and either dissuade the engage or join the fight.
And they played the objective game so well. They get their first like giant victory around Baron. That's what you have to force, and you can't be dissuaded. And to be fair, Kingzone didn't really set up a good comp to really stop Barons. I feel like I feel like they didn't have this like annoying.
They
didn't have the annoying. They didn't have the annoying 3-man unit that can just jump in and jump out and try to intimidate them. Try to say, we have 2 guys who can teleport in. Didn't have that.
It's not like when they used to be able to play this when they had Galio for BD, where Galio could literally just ult in at any time, save somebody's life, and make a huge impact instant.
Yeah.
Instead, he's playing that Aurelia, and in game 2, it did pay dividends. He was able to really dominate the second game on Aurelia, but in that first game, it was just kind of he played against Sion. He really struggled to pressure the Sion out, and I've got to say, Zhao, who played that pick really well and played. Well, he played BDD's style. You look at the champions he played. He played Vladimir, Sion, and Galio in this game. Yeah. Those are 3 picks that BDD has been playing quite often in the LCK. And he played them better than BDD has this tournament. So I got to give him credit there. And he really showed BDD that you can't disrespect an enemy mid laner the way he did in the LCK, where he was able to just play Sion and ignore them for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I like Xiaohu quite a lot. I think he was, in my opinion, at least the second best mid laner at the tournament. If we're saying Maple was the best, but
I want to say Maple was the best mid laner at this tournament.
But like in the later stages of the tournament, Xiaohu really showed me what he's made of. I think he's the best Vladimir in the world by far. And one thing that I will say though, like he got really like easy in sometimes, because like every game where he was playing a roaming mid laner, he was walking up to the top lane from blue
Yeah.
side, taking the blast cone over the wall and getting a kill. And that
Yeah.
happened like I think 10 times this tournament, and nobody adapted to it. It was really strange to me.
Always using that blast cone,
Yeah.
and perfectly playing around it. But at the same time, it's like you're saying the best Vladimir in the world, and I can't help but think that Vladimir was just a really strong pick for mid laners in general. Like
Yeah.
Maple performed really well on it. You saw some top laners actually put it out as well and performed really well on it. It was just the ability to get that Chevalier's Reverie, pressure the backline out to the point where the item's actually being nerfed now. It's getting a gold increase because of the way that it was played competitively so frequently. So I still got to give him a lot of credit for how well he played and how he was able to constantly play the map so effectively, especially when he was playing against all these roaming mid laners and junglers, people that wanted to push him out, like Talia, or even people like the Karma, who was still able to play so effectively.
One thing that I wanted to come back to a bit though is that Alawi game, because
Oh
actually
god, yeah.
I actually no, I think that was that showed very well what the problem was, because we talked about it during while we watched the game.
Yeah.
I think he was right to die some of the time in with Alawi. The Alawi was a suicide bomber. Let's be real here. It's not a Camille. It doesn't get away. It pushes it pushes all the time, and it needs support. And the support
Yeah.
just wasn't there.
Because, as we said earlier, Peanut just had to be bot lane consistently.
Yeah.
So when he's playing this Alawi and he's pushing so aggressively, the way Alawi works is you need to be strong enough, you need to get enough of an advantage in that early game to be able to win the 2v1 with your ultimate.
And
He wasn't able to do that. And he was never able to do that at any point in the game. So he really struggled versus that one.
yeah, and got ganked over and over again.
By this Skarner, which you got to give Caster credit for, he really pressured him out.
Yeah, really good play around that, but I feel like it was the right pick in the right situation. It just wasn't catered to. That was
There was
the game
still
they
a lot of
won,
mistakes
though,
though,
right?
because if you know where your jungler is on the map and you know you don't have enough of an advantage, you have to play safer, and that's something that Khan isn't really adept at. We've not seen him have the ability to play safe, know he's at a disadvantage, because he's been given that advantage for the almost entire time that he's been on King Zone / Longzhu.
Yeah.
So when you think about Khan now, and people have been saying that maybe this is just a team that chokes into. You look at now Prey and Gorilla. Prey having lost every single time in the World Championships to the team that goes on to win the World Championships, and
Having made,
Gorilla now having been to 3 finals and lost 3 finals as well. But the thing is, these are players that have performed well internationally that we're talking about here. Like Peanut, he's played well internationally as well. But when you look at Khan in the top lane, he has not had a single good performance at an international event. He has really struggled. It's like he had one game on Camille this tournament where he played well, but at the same time,
still
it was
think-
because he was playing Camille versus, I think it was someone like Evos or Fnatic that were playing pretty badly at the time. If you look at like him versus decent teams, like yes, they won their group in Worlds, but the moment they played against Samsung, Khan crumbled versus Cube, a player he absolutely dicked on during the LCK.
Yeah,
So he has this massive step down.
Yeah, they're falling back onto Prey quite a lot. I remember even like at Worlds when they played how are they called again? The Gigabyte Marines.
Yeah.
And basically they had this gigantically long game, and in the end it had to be Prey just hard carrying on Varus, just doing all the damage his team did at that in the entire game.
But do you remember the legendary Rocks versus SKT series where the game was decided by Prey being on Ashe, and he got a triple kill in one fight, then used his ultimate to stop a teleport all the way across the map, blindly firing his ultimate to win the game. I feel like a lot of the success of these teams with Prey in them just comes down to, can Prey carry late game team fights? And Prey, honestly, in my opinion, is the second best ADC in the world right now, behind Uzi.
Yeah.
So this is unfortunate for him.
Yeah.
That he had to go up against Uzi in this final.
And it shouldn't be Prey. Like, it shouldn't be just Prey. They have so many good players on that team that should be able to step up. Even Gorilla, to some extent, should be able to just go into a Rakan and just mop up 3 or 4 people and just carry the game through that. We saw that. We saw Ming doing that. We saw Hylissang doing that. We saw that doing that. We didn't see Gorilla do that.
Yeah, Gorilla didn't really have the impact of the other sports, so I gotta say that much. And no one in Kingzone besides Prey really stepped up. BDD had his games where, like, on Aurelia, he did manage to step up, but overall, consistency was what I valued the most, and I did not see that from anybody but Prey on Kingzone. And even Prey made some mistakes this tournament, which were uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
So, I was still really disappointed with the roster overall, and it makes me worried for the LCK now, because they could come back into the LCK and without a dramatic turnaround or some big changes in terms of the mentality, this could be a team that loses out to KT. This could be a team that loses out to SKT, and now SKT is starting to make changes. Or even Griffin, if they don't lose everything. Griffin, ironically, being torn apart by Vultures.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about the LCK for a second here. I'm interested to see the LCK evolve throughout the summer. I think there's been a major, like, we saw the Korean exodus in 2015, which was the last major revolution in the region. I think there's a new major revolution coming through, which is basically League of Legends talent taking over these organizations. We do not have, for example, Gen G is not at Samsung anymore. They are very player oriented and have League of Legends talents in their ranks. We have,
but at the same time, you've got to look at like some of these organizations as well, and all the other divisions they have. You mentioned Gen G, of course, owned by KSV, or they were named the previous split, is the owner of the Seoul Tigers, one of the leading Overwatch League teams.
Dynasty.
Seoul Dynasty, rather. The logo is a tiger, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so they're the owners of the Seoul Dynasty, one of the leading teams in the Overwatch League. So there's a lot of diversity in terms of
they're not.
There's resources being put elsewhere. Oh god, how bad is it?
It's like that's 5th or 6th.
That's still not bad. It's still
out
like
of 10.
Okay, they're not Shanghai. Leave them alone. They're not Shanghai. Okay.
Yeah, no, not Shanghai. I can agree with that.
I'm sitting here happy knowing London's doing well. Oh god. It was second last time I asked you about this. Why is this happening?
Anyway, back to League of Legends. It is a major shift in
Koma, of course, becoming the head of SKT in all esports. Yeah.
So we have League of Legends veterans coming in now, who do not have, let's say, that long of experience. We have like players from season 3, season 4, kind of calling the shots here. They have been in esports for like 3 years, and maybe do not have the experience of like long-standing success that some of the StarCraft players have that have managed or at least been part of teams since like 07, 05 sometimes.
So one of the comparisons I want to give you here is Emperor, a player who got carried by G2 and their rookie, Trick, and Trick wasn't a rookie, but getting carried by Trick and Perks in that split, and was able to win a split in EU. Went over to Korea, played about 3 games, then was benched. Then didn't play again. He's one of the leading coaches for the Rocks Tigers. Then you look at, let's go with SKT. They've got Rapid Star as one of their coaches. They've got Bengi as one of their coaches. These are people who have a lot more experience, a lot more long-standing experience. So it's the veteran coaching that needs to be coming through, and it's these people who have been around for long periods of time that should be leading the coaching staffs of teams. When you put a player in charge who has that little experience, it's rather worrying, because generally these are players who aren't able to adapt to meta shift.
Yeah.
Because they played for such a short amount of time, then retired.
Yeah. It is a worrying trend. I think they're throwing the, how's it called again? They're throwing out the, there's a saying, they're throwing out something with something, but I forgot the saying. Never mind.
I don't know the saying, but anyway, it's they want to keep these veteran coaches in, these people who know the game the best, but so many of them are leaving to China as well. You got people like people going to NA, like Kane, Coach Song, of course, going to TSM.
It's kind of interesting that we see, on the one hand, Korea moving away from these long-standing coaches, and then being picked up in other regions. And
of course, Reaper for C9 as well has been an amazing coach there.
Yeah, it kind of feels like one gap is closing. I won't say the gap is closing, but one gap is closing, and that's the veteran gap, because every region has veterans now who are forming these teams. We have like Young Buck in the EU scene.
Korea keeps losing their veterans at the same time.
Probably we have in North America again. It's worrying to me. And on the one hand, I do think it's a good situation when we have more player focused organizations, especially in Korea, where players have historically been, I wouldn't say abused, but like they have been playing in relatively strange conditions, where they have been playing like 17 hours a day or some crazy shit. I remember an article by Liquid Snood. It's a StarCraft player who went to Korea to play the Korean like practice routine of like 50 games, 50 StarCraft games a day. A StarCraft game on average 15 to 20 minutes. The guy was eating, sleeping, and shitting StarCraft at the end. He said he was dreaming about StarCraft.
Oh god. I've been there, at the point where you start dreaming about the video game that you've been spamming that often.
And it's that crazy, and I do want to see Korea shifting away from that, but at the same time, some of the methods have to be kept for Korea to be the top region still, and I don't think it is that way. And I think Korea needs another major shift in mentality to get back to producing multiple world-beating teams and have like the all Korean finals again.
It seems like the whole world is having this kind of dip in competitive consistency. You look in EU, it was everybody beating everybody. Korea, everybody beating everybody. Same in China, same in NA, where it just felt like any team could take it all.
Same in the LMS.
But the thing is, like, Kingzone was the only exception through all those major regions, because it looked like Kingzone was on top throughout the entire split. They didn't lose a single best of 3 where Khan started. So now seeing Kingzone themselves be a part of this fiesta where even they're not consistent, is it's shocking, and I'm wondering what it is going to develop in terms of summer split, because this is very similar to I always refer to this, another team fight centric meta, season 5 spring, where everybody was beating everybody then. When in the summer,
end of season 5 spring.
Yeah, well, towards the end of season 5 spring, but everybody was beating everybody.
Season 5 spring was the like really stupid meta where you have like you know those
when the Cinder Hulk meta came along.
Just let me finish my sentence. You have those stupid metas where you have like 80 carries being Sivir, Varus, and Ashe consistently throughout the board. That's always, I think, one of the worst types of metas you can have. But
at the same time, when the meta is Sivir Maokai, that's a team fight meta. But it was that kind of meta where it was so focused around team fights, and everybody was beating everybody. It was all coming down to these late game team fights where it was all one or two abilities that could change the entire course of the game. It's very similarly back to that now, and we saw it was even worse previously with the death timer changes, where one team fight would just cause a team that has been winning for 40 minutes to lose the game.
Yeah.
But now heading into the summer split, this is when things should start to even out. You're going to see more teams become more consistent. And if you again to look back to season 5, that's when Fnatic got that 18-0 split. Mm-hmm. That's where SKT went nearly undefeated through that summer split as well. After in the spring split, it was an entire fiesta. So I'm expecting something similar again, where teams start to work it out, where teams, the meta starts to move away from just so team fight focused and becomes a bit more strategic oriented.
And one of the most consistent teams right now around, I think, is RNG coming through.
Yeah.
They're because they have consistent, very consistent in the late game. They have some weaknesses in the early to mid game, as we saw against Fnatic, but they consistently can stabilize a game at like 40 minutes and start winning. Or like
the thing is,
at
in China, but
that's
an issue for them in China because there are much better teams at playing the early game than we saw in this entire tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting that the tournament level seemed really low this tournament. There was no one willing to pressure out the early game. And all the early games seemed really slow. There were very few early games where we saw 2 or 3 kills and somebody starts snowballing, apart from in that first couple days, where we saw Evos go for a dive, mess up, and lose 3 members. And that's just the end of the game at minute 5. But it's interesting if we see them go back into China when you've got teams like IG, who arguably were stronger than them, where IG had to substitute their top laner for Duke, who hadn't been playing at all. The Shy had to go out with wrist issues. Maybe they would have won that series. Maybe they would have seen IG here, and maybe we would have seen the exact same result. It's really interesting to see that there are multiple teams in China, and the finals were 3-2 with EDG. This is so close. 3 teams, all being able to compete with RNG.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like IG with the Shy. A lot of people said, "Oh, Duke isn't a bad top laner." No, he isn't. But he isn't.
He wasn't the Shy.
Yeah, that's one thing. And second of all, Duke isn't an aggressive top laner. He's not forcing leads. The Shy is forcing leads.
He's a very mechanically intensive top laner. At the same time, Duke hadn't been playing with the team the entire split as well. They hadn't split any scrim time with him. They hadn't split any game time. Duke played his first game competitively in about 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, and he lost against RNG.
Yeah, and
3-2 again, I believe.
The Shy reminds me a lot more of like Smep in season 5, season 6, where he was carrying, and well, then you have Duke basically being the polar opposite, as we saw at 2016 Worlds.
It's interesting to see that team could have topped RNG, but at the same time, RNG showing up to this championship, showing up to MSI and popping off. They really, in the latter stages of the tournament, they managed to find their groove. Uzi played so well consistently throughout all their games, in these, especially in these late game team fights, where he was able to carry, even in losing games, he was winning team fights for them. And he got so close to just turning the game around on a dime.
And they have these very consistent. They have a very consistent setup overall. With Let Me in the top lane, maybe undeservedly getting the series MVP over Fnatic, but
he played Ornn. He just played Ornn.
He played Ornn, and he plays Ornn good, and he just consistently forces the right fights in the late game that Uzi can win them. Xiaohu is either actually carrying during the early to mid game, or is at least consistent in the late game, getting the right picks on Vladimir and Malzahar and everything, working really well. Then you have Karsa, who's now bringing a consistent early game element where you can...
I believe he only played 1 game during the entire... Well, one or 2 games during the entire spring split. Then at the World Championship, at the MSI, he's played more games here than he did during the entirety of the spring split. And he's been showing up. He's been consistent. He's been able to continue that early game form that he showed on Flash Wolves, where he's able to dictate the tempo. He's able to get vision down, perform great counter ganks.
Yeah.
And he looked like he actually understood the early game better than a lot of the junglers, and was able to shut down aggressive junglers like Broxer quite often.
Yeah. And then we had, last but not least, we have Ming. Who just consistently builds opportunities. He's a very good Alistar player. And
his Janna was so clutch. Every single tornado was knocking up key targets.
His Rakan was good. He reminds me a lot of like on Alistar specifically. He reminds me a lot of come on.
Team.
TSM support lane. TSM support.
Current support at Mithy or
Mithy, yeah, exactly.
Mithy, right?
Where he's not the Afromu Alistar who just constantly jumps in and gets like the 4-man knockups. He's the guy who gets the right headbutts to get people away from Uzi.
Maybe running into fewer brushes and dying during the early game than Mithy though.
Yeah, sure. But like he's consistently using his tools to control a fight rather than to start a fight, and it's he's looking very good, honestly.
Yeah, it's I was so impressed by RNG in these later stages of the tournament, where they were able to play team fights so excellently. They were able to play around objectives so excellently. They knew when to reset tempo, go back for a recall so they could get back onto the map, get to the key objectives, ward up the objectives. It never seemed like they were out of a game entirely. It always seemed like there was one team fight where they could get themselves back in, including that last game, Game 4, where it was such a commanding position for Kingzone. It looked like Kingzone was sure to win, and Uzi came in with 2 or 3 clutch moments. And that final Ornn engage where they picked off Prey to be able to win the game.
Yeah.
It's so impressive that they know exactly when to strike.
Yeah. So, now we open a can of worms. We got Mr. Uzi performing really well. And other people are asking, is he the best AD carry in the world, or even the best player in the world? I think AD carry. I think there's no
without question.
There's no contest right now. Prey had a good tournament, fair enough, but I think Uzi has been showing up in so many team fights, doing the clutch plays, just being able to carry fights that he shouldn't be able to carry, and just being aggressive but not over aggressive, and it's a beauty to watch.
As a champion, it feels like Kaiser's designed. It's exactly what he used to do on Vayne in Season 3, when he was so dominant back then. So it's giving him the ability to dive into the backline, to be able to get all this pressure that he needs to put onto them, and pick off key members in a way that he couldn't previously.
Kaiser always felt to me like better Vayne, honestly.
Yeah. With Vayne, it's more consistent damage to the front line. Kaiser's just, I'm going to destroy your backline.
Yeah, exactly. Just going very, very deep in, doesn't have that much range, but it's just able to obliterate people when they get close.
Yeah, it's really impressive, and I have to say that Uzi is by far the best AD carry in the world right now. In terms of like his mechanical ability, his understanding of team fights. It seemed like he made 0 mistakes all tournament long. I have to give him so much credit.
I mean, it's not true, but it
feels that way.
Yeah.
Like. There's no standout moments where you're like, oh, he cost his team the game. All that sticks in your mind are those key moments where he was diving the backline and securing kills.
Yeah.
So when we look over to the other side of it, where you've got now, is he one of the best players in the world, or one of the best players ever? And there was a lot of arguments on Twitter that I saw about this, which was
let's actually start with is he the best player right now? Because I think that's a better place to start to just establish that.
If you take current form as the only measurement, yes, he's the best player in the world right now.
We of course have some players that weren't at the tournament. We didn't have Faker there, of course. We didn't have the Shy there. Mata wasn't there. Although I will be honest, Mata hasn't really impressed me that much in the season overall.
I think it's really impressive though that Smeb could become the best top laner in the world at this tournament without having played a single game. Just because Khan played that badly. It's just Smeb's the best top laner again. Okay, guys, we can go home.
So yeah, we'll have to.
But now you look at it, like when you talk about away from current form, best players of all time, and you can talk about Uzi as. Whenever he has played, he has been a top mechanical ADC. There has been no examples where he has not been a top mechanical ADC. It's just not to this same level since like Season 3, Season 4. So you can talk about some other players that are, if you can throw their hat into the ring for. They've obviously got like Marta.
I mean, let's start by saying we're talking about the second best player of all time.
Yes,
Faker is of course
Faker.
The best player of all time.
Faker of all time. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. Faker has dominated League of Legends for so many years. Yeah. There's a reason he has so many championships to his name, and he has developed the game so much further in terms of people directly going, I have to be able to beat Faker, and he has inspired so much of the mid lane talent in Korea to try and challenge him. To the point where Febiven's still known as the Faker Slayer because he 1v1 Faker twice in a game.
Yeah, and then we have...
Even though later on, and literally the year after, he got 1v1 by Faker 3 times in a game. No, he's the Faker Slayer, that's the narrative.
I mean, Pawn has literally made a career out of being the kryptonite to Faker.
Yeah, it's kind of come to a head where KT and Pawn, it's the kryptonite to Faker, and then the team that always loses to SKT. So, the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. What must happen is they phase through each other.
And bang carries and everything works.
And everything just happens to work. But Katie still managed to make it through. And now you have to look at this like Marta as probably one of the big considerations for second best player of all time. Because of his work on Samsung White, because of his world championship he got there, and how much he helped change the way competitive League of Legends was played with his work with Dandy.
Let's. I think I can tell the story a bit better because I don't think you were around back then. Basically,
I was, but not as frequently.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, Marta really pushed the Vision game together with Dandy to the next level. They basically were the real innovators when it came to support jungle Vision invades. Just going in, putting some wards down, even if you don't find the enemy jungler, just put the wards down. Yeah. Have map control. The ward changes were made because there were some crazy stats where basically you could have as many pink wards as possible as you wanted to back then. So Marta put down 18 pink wards on average per game.
Yeah.
And they just pushed the Vision game to the next level. Also, Marta, of course, individually a pretty good player. With Imp, he made so many plays. A lot of people are kind of comparing him to Mad Life, and I would say Mad Life kind of pushed the game a bit further than Marta when it came to just,
at least in terms of playmaking,
just pure playmaking. But Marta had the entire team aspect around it. He shaped China as well. Very much so. Really pushed some of the 80 carries up that were around. We had how's he called again? TNT? No, not TNT. The guy on RNG.
I forget the name. The former AD carry on RNG. Yeah. The name's escaping me. I could probably pull it up fairly quickly.
That would be nice.
Go on anyway.
The two played so well together, and Marta really embodies to me the drive to build a team that can win. He's a leader.
So the former AD carries on RNG are Whoosh again, Name, and Whoosh again. Whoosh twice.
Really? Just Whoosh?
Yeah.
Wasn't there another guy? Where was Marta before?
Marta was... let me pull up Marta quickly.
Or is the guy maybe still at RNG?
I don't think he is. They already have 3 AD carries at RNG, and 2 of them joined this year. Actually, he was on Vici Gaming before he was on RNG. That's why.
Okay, but that didn't work too well. I remember that one.
No, that was when he joined with Dandy. They picked up Dandy and Marta and went, "This is it. We've got them. We've got the duo."
No, you don't. Vici never succeeded with those two. It breaks my heart every time.
Yeah, it's Y4 and Abel. No TNT or anything to the like, but I can't think of the name of the player you would be thinking of.
I don't remember that. But there was another. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway. Yeah, I must completely remember that. I just remember that.
I can try and find it. Just keep going anyway.
Keep going. So yeah, that's kind of the pitch for Marta. I do think Marta should be considered above Uzi. But on the other hand, we have Uzi with a lot of accomplishments. He went to World Finals twice, of course, hard carrying his team both times. I mean, do you remember the name Cola?
Oh god, yeah.
Cola was the top laner of Star on Royal Club in 2014.
Yeah, the name, I do remember the name Cola, but I can't expect many people to.
Yeah.
TNT changed his name to Happy, was previously on Vici Gaming, and prior to that was on Royal Club.
Okay.
So he did play with Marta, but on Royal Club. On Vici, not Royal Club.
Yeah, I'm lost then. I'm just lost. But yeah, we had that. Um, uh, he never really had the domestic success, and I think that's the biggest thing he couldn't hold against him. Even when he played in like teams that were really poised to do well domestically, like you had that OMG lineup with like Going, Loveling, Cool, Uzi, and I think it was even Zero as a support. That was a team that was so hyped. That was probably the hypest team I've ever seen come out of China, and they completely bombed. It was
Uzi really kind of he played well, but he didn't really pick up again until he got put back on Orange.
Mhm.
He didn't really step up and become that world beater that he was known for.
Yeah, and
because he was going up against Deft and really struggling to show his strength.
And he really developed as a person as well over the years. He was a relatively toxic asset actually in.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's never been that kind of piglet player where you need a support to rein him in or he's going to be awful. He's still a competent player on his own. It's just he needed to develop as a player.
He wanted the game to be played around him at all times, and he really developed. He's even one of the like leading members of this movement in China that is really has really developed, where Chinese teams help each other and bring up China as a region. We saw him really instrumental, for example, at that Rift Rivals win they had last year, and it really fills my heart with a lot of love to see him develop into an actual leader and become just that much of an asset to any team that would pick him up.
So this was officially the third tournament where China has beaten Korea, and they are the only team to have beaten Korea since.
I mean, you could say IPL 5 as well.
Yeah, that's we have to go a long way back before. Like you can talk about Korea versus WE was it?
Yeah, well,
GE Tigers got beaten by World Elite, and then World Elite got beaten by TSM. But let's just brush over that.
Yeah,
that didn't happen. NA get 0 credit.
Yeah, but on the other side, we had like the World Elite win at IPL 5. I really like talking about it, but I think we should probably move on from that.
Yeah, the point is, China is the region that consistently beats Korea at international events. I say consistently. They've struggled in the past few years, but they're the only team that's been able to.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah. There's like if we're looking at the LMS is good at beating Korea in best of 1. They've never beaten them in a best of 5.
Yeah. China is becoming a really interesting region overall.
I think it's a lot of it comes down to the money into it. Now they've got 16 teams rather than the previous 10.
They're actually moving to like Bundesliga sizes now.
Yeah.
Like
two more teams into 2 conferences.
Two more teams, and we actually have a Bundesliga sized.
Jesus.
Bundesliga for anyone who doesn't know the glorious German Football League. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, where they beat us at our own sport consistently.
Yeah. Didn't want to say Premier League because that's 20 teams. We're still a bit off that.
Yeah, it's
But yeah,
it could be the Scottish League. That's like 12 teams. It's fine.
they have China building stadiums now. China is probably when it comes to the infrastructural aspect, China is probably the most developed esports region at all in the entire world right now.
And if you're willing to put off the bruiser changes, I'd like to talk about the infrastructure and the development that they've had, because you've got teams like LGD that built a stadium to then go 0-6 in the start of the season.
Yes.
Where they were really underperforming, and now that it seems like they're going to make some big changes. Imp's gone; he's left the team. Rumors where he could go. A mysterious silhouette appeared on WE's Twitter, where they posted, or equivalent of Weibo, where they tweeted a silhouette with a question mark in it of someone who looks mysteriously like Imp. So we can't confirm just yet, but it seems like maybe there's a new ADC at WE.
Yeah, and that kind
Somebody
of
to replace Mystic.
yeah, and there were rumors that they're now gonna dismantle Griffin, the most
Oh,
hyped
God, yeah.
team coming out of the
Rumors that they're losing their jungle and support to LGD. There's also
Yeah.
rumors, I believe, that Ziv is going to LGD. There's
no
rumors of all these
actually,
different
Zev
players
is
going to
just
LGD.
rumored to go to OMG or RNG.
Ooh, interesting. So
No, not OMG, EDG. I'm stupid.
EDG or RNG, but I can't see either. I can see RNG picking him up. I cannot see whatsoever EDG picking him up when they've got Ray performing so well in top lane.
At the same time, I don't know if you want to mess with RNG right now because I think Let Me is just clicking with the team right now,
Yeah, it's hard, but the thing is, like,
and he's not like
they still have the option to just have him as a sub. You know,
Yeah.
they've got ZZ Tai as well, where they can just
yeah, like
have three top laners.
Last season, I was just I was I think the last guy to say like Coase should stay, because he just worked with the team that well on Kingzone or Longju at the time, and I kind of feel like, well, Let Me is not the greatest top laner in the world. He's just that he fits that perfectly into that team.
This is a low resource top laner.
To just have a consistent late game team fighting presence.
But at the same time, I've really enjoyed Ray on EDG, how well he's been playing, how consistent he's been as a carry top laner. Playing Rumble, like I think he was the only top laner in China to be playing it, and he played it really well. So I still want to see him stick around, and I still want to see him have the opportunities to be able to play for EDG. But interesting changes coming through. But with all the infrastructure and the money that's coming into the stadiums, I believe it's LGD, Snake, both have stadiums. I think there's two other teams with stadiums as well. And
You're saying
there's a lot of
WE
extra
maybe
money
has?
that can come into these teams. Pardon?
You're saying WE maybe has one?
I think it's WE, but then it's either EDG or RNG has one.
Anyway, so China, the way I see it is they're developing into like bigger Korea. At least they're trying to become bigger Korea.
Yeah. And with the amount of players they have, and the rumored stats being 126 million people watching, got the player base to be able to get this talent. And they've got the infrastructure now to support this talent in the rise. I think China is going to be the next region to dominate League of Legends. And the fact that we get to see the rise of that, it's not like when we've seen Korea in the past, where it's kind of like people get fed up of watching Korea succeed because they're the only region that can ever do it. We get to see the rise of China from never having won a world championship before, losing out consistently in the finals, where they lost the Starhorn Royal Club, losing 2 finals in a row, then 2 all Korean finals. I believe this could be the first year where we see a three all Korean finals. Then this could be the first year that we see another Chinese team back in the finals again.
To be fair, they weren't Star and Royal Club twice. They were Royal Club and then Starhorn Royal Club.
Get out, Louis. Come on. It wasn't SKT, it was SKT T1S, actually, that won that world championship.
No, it was K.
No, it's S, obviously. It's the team with Marin, Wolf, and Bang. Who's this Bangy fellow you're talking about?
Anyway, so yeah, China looking really interesting coming through. While we already were at the news, let's just make it official. Good news, everybody! We got just a couple more actually, because well, we kind of went through China already. Fly moving to Genji is another one I want to talk about.
Rumors that Crown wants to retire, and after he's been talking about the mental issues he's been having when he has a losing split after World Championship in season 6. He came out and made a statement that he felt depressed and he didn't want to play League, he didn't want to touch a computer, and it really affected him mentally. So when Samsung has KSV rather has such a disappointing split, you can imagine how this is impacting him mentally, coming off of just having won the World Championship. So maybe that mentality is leading him to want to take a step back. They've brought in Fly, an experienced player who has played in the LCK before, so maybe looking to start him instead. Rumors that QV wants to step down. Ambition, of course, who played awfully during the spring split, potentially being replaced by QV as well. We've heard rumors of.
We have Mong joining as well in the top lane now.
Top lane.
I do not know Mong
till now.
Among has played in the CK. That's
Yeah,
always he
yeah.
finished I think third in the CK last year. That's the only claim
So,
to fame I believe he has.
I don't know if there's any talent behind that guy. There probably is at least some. One thing that worries me though when it comes to Genji, KSV, Samsung, it just worries me a lot that they have chewed through a lot of talent by this point. They have chewed through maybe not the best talent, to be fair. Like, of course, Core JJ was the better support than Wraith, but the way
Yeah.
they just threw Wraith out immediately after just bringing in Core JJ.
Yeah, they go, let's try out our AD carry sub as a support. Oh, he's better than Wraith? Bye, Wraith. Wraith
Yeah.
never plays another game with the team ever again.
Yeah, and it really worries me that they might just develop a reputation of, oh, you'll be out in like 2 months, because now we have rumors that we have Kuve stepping, maybe, like, okay, the rumor is that Kuve is switching position, but the logical position he would be switching to is jungle, so we might
Because
just
they
have
brought in a
Haru.
sub because they brought in a sub top
Yeah.
and mid, yeah.
Yeah, so we might just have Haru being given the shaft now,
Yeah.
and it's just not a good look, honestly.
I mean, the only thing Haru's good for is that World Championship Ezreal skin he's giving us. Where he played one game of Ezreal at Worlds, nearly lost on it, but it doesn't matter because he was part of the team and they need to represent substitutes thanks to EasyHoon.
Yeah, they tried to like he wanted Samsung Rangar.
He
But,
wanted another Samsung Rangar skin,
Yeah,
exactly.
but there already is one, my friend. So
Yeah. So this was the first year where they actually said on the World Championship skin front that you're allowed to have an overlap. And ironically, they're using two of the champions that were Season 1 and 2. So they're giving Jarvan, a replacement from Fnatic Jarvan, of course the jungler in Season 1, and Samsung Ezreal, TPA Ezreal from Season 2.
Yeah.
Except Ezreal was moving to the jungle for this, rather than being an ADC skin.
yes,
So it's an interesting one, but it just represents that small microcosm where for 1 or 2 patches Ezreal was a really good jungler.
yeah. So
But you spoke about Wraith. Wraith, of course, having retired from Jin Air now, and you can look at the other changes with Jin Air. We mentioned last episode Cacao joining Jin Air. I believe we've had some more information on that now as well.
we got
So,
Nova joining as well as support.
Yeah. So let me just Korea here. So yeah, Nova joining as the support to replace him. Nova, not somebody we really know all that much about, but another new talent potentially coming through. Interesting to see if Jin Air can really pick up with this roster, and if they could try and pick up where it left off, where it was actually middle of the pack, and we've got Teddy. Teddy having to play with a new support though is what I'm worried about, because Teddy was really, really good as an ADC. A lot of that came down to him being able to do a lot of work solos. So how is this going to work with this duo lane? Is there going to be much synergy to it? Is Nova going to be free to roam around the map like Wraith was?
Yeah. So Fly, of course, coming from North America. I do not want to talk about the massive changes we have in North America quite yet. We're gonna do a preseason episode.
Yeah, so well, I'll talk about it loosely because the fact that Fly has left FlyQuest now means that Keen, the substitute mid laner who started most of the split for FlyQuest because of Fly's visa issues, is now going to be the starting mid laner. So
Yeah.
good props to him. He deserves it. He's a really good mid laner, and I want to see him have a full-time spot on. But Fly, having been a former KT Rolster player, having played on
And played on good.
having
teams.
played on the what were they called, the Gold Coin United in the Challenger Series in NA, then a little bit on FlyQuest, is now coming back to Korea. So he's got a lot of pressure to show that he's still got it.
Yeah. For sure. Not sure. I mean, they're gonna probably gradually phase out Crown, if they actually want to phase out Crown.
I think they will. I think Crown is. It comes down to his mentality, and we saw he really, really had a bad split.
I think-
Very, very bad split. The worst split he's had in a long time.
Mhm.
And it was a lot of that I think has to come down to his mentality. And we've seen interviews with him. It just makes sense that that's who he seems to be.
I still feel like Crown is young enough to develop as a talent. He has a lot of talent behind him, and I think if he can get his mentality in check, he can still be a player to remember.
Maybe he just needs to take a split out. But I think he needs some time away from the competitive team.
Maybe
to,
especially
develop.
some time away from that Samsung roster, because I feel like it's not really a great place to be at to address your personal issues.
Yeah. But we're talking about talent though, and that's one thing I want to mention with Yukal. Yukal started a lot of the later games in the split for KT Rolster, and he looked like a really strong mid laner. He was competing with BDD, he was competing with Faker quite often, and actually looked like really, really good young mid laner. So Horn is rumored to be retiring now. He's had back issues for the longest time since his EDG days. The fact that he was getting subbed out more and more as the split went on kind of maybe is indicative of those issues being long-standing. Maybe him looking to take a backseat role and give Yukal more time, but it seems like Horn's career is coming to an end, and Yukal is the guy to replace him. I think I have to say, because he performed so outstandingly on picks like Swain, where he was able to have massive impact.
Really, a career to look back on. Honestly, he was always a very interesting mid laner to watch. He brought a very interesting style to the game, where he was basically the magnet for pressure. He kind of revolutionized the Darien play style of, hey, look at me, I'm doing this crazy shit. Look at me. don't look anybody else.
I think with Pawn, like, he's always going to be remembered as the guy who took the general's jacket and went on to win the finals, and that story being so memorable to me of how Dade gave him the famous general jacket, and that being immortalized on the Samsung Talons.
The last memorable thing Dade ever did.
Yeah. Oh god, the Dade Award choking worlds. But all the same, it's Pawn has had an illustrious career, and he's had a world championship to his name. He's had multiple titles.
He's got an MSI to his name as well.
Yeah, he famously destroyed Faker in a 1v1 on Morgana versus LeBlanc. On Faker's he was the first player to ever defeat Faker's undefeated LeBlanc.
Yeah.
I believe it was 18 wins and 0 losses at that point. So
yeah,
he's got a few reasons to be immortalized, and if this is the last of him, then I wish him the best of luck in future endeavors. I hope he becomes a coach. I hope he sticks around in the scene.
I hope he doesn't become a coach, but I hope he becomes like an assistant coach or something.
Yeah, he doesn't have to become the head coach, but
yeah,
I want him to at least stick around in the esports scene rather than just go, "Why I'm going to the military."
To be fair, I do want to see a team head coached by Pawn and see how that looks.
Oh god.
But yeah, speaking of a couple of retirements, we have Fire Lolly retiring. Fire Lolly, we might know him as where the fuck is Clearlove?
Yeah. And when we talked about EDG as well, that's something we forgot to mention. Clearlove going to be starting full time now with Fire Lolly having retired. So this means that
Fire Lolly wasn't even on EDG anymore.
Of course, but the thing is, EDG is going to be starting Clearlove full time now.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Clearlove is going to be the starting jungler. They've got the better jungler starting from the start of the split, rather than just playing 2 or 3 games before playoffs, as he did throughout the summer split.
We're talking about Fire Lolly's retirement, and we immediately talk about Clearlove again.
His entire career is decided by where's Clearlove. Can we talk about Clearlove yet?
Another retirement that is kind of on the horizon, I think. We see Tabe moving away from a coaching role at Hong Kong Attitude.
Yeah.
And maybe he will stick around, but if it's his retirement, also a very interesting career to look back on. Made Season 3 Worlds Finals with Royal Club. Then in Season 4, I think, leaked IG strategy on stream.
Oh god, that's legendary.
Yeah, he was basically on the...
Okay, so we were waiting for them to pick this, and then they'll pick this. Our secret strategies are this, this, and this. and I remember so vividly.
He was on the analyst
as he
desk.
sat there. Yeah, the analyst desk, and they go, so Yeah, what do you? So he says like, what do you think of this and this champion? It's like, interesting you say that. We had a plan that if this and this is picked, and you see Kobe in chat just go, no, 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 stop talking. As he keeps leaking strats.
It's the
Oh god.
yeah, it's the greatest leak act on stream we had. The second greatest, of course, Dyrus leaking CLG strat at Season 1 Worlds.
Dignitas' strats as well. Oh, god.
But yeah, fun times with Tabe. Hope he maybe sticks around as a commentator as well. Could be interesting.
Yeah, the fact that he speaks English is interesting, and that he could potentially be brought in as LPL staff,
or maybe if we ever see an LMS broadcast.
I really want to see an LMS broadcast, and I want to be on it. I love the LMS.
Let's hope we can get there
Yeah.
at some point. Other than that, I think we're. Oh wait, there's one more news. Freeze is moving to the Royal Bandits.
Oh no, Freeze! Why does this keep happening to you?
Yes, like we talked about this before. There surely has to be a better way than Turkey for him.
Yeah, he's the player who has gone between. Okay, so he went from Copenhagen Wolves, which fell apart, to Renegades, which fell apart, to H2K, where he got subbed out
for the best AD carry in Europe.
The best AD carry in Europe, forgiven, because he had hand issues. He expressed that his hand issues are fine now, and he doesn't actually have any injuries. He was still kryptonite, and nobody wanted to pick him up, so now he's gone to Turkey.
Yeah, before kind of roamed around the NA Challenger scene as well.
Yeah, I believe Imagine was one of the teams he was on for a little while.
Oh, poor fella. Anyway, yeah. So Freeze stuck in limbo again.
One of the real issues here is unless any more changes are going to be made for Royal Bandits. One, they've got 3 imports currently, 2 German players, that mid and top laner, and Freeze, so they can't have 3 imports. Also, their current AD carry is Holy Phoenix, known as the best AD carry in Turkey, somebody who can actually play at roughly an LCS level. And he just wants to run in and go, oh yeah, I'm replacing you now. It's going to be really competitive for him, and again, it might just be stuck behind Forgiven sort of thing.
Is leaving, that could also...
If Holy Phoenix is leaving, that would be what I would be interested in, but at the same time, because they've brought in recently at that, because they had Septed and Malrang previously, 2 German players who are the import slots, it more speaks to the fact that Freeze is the substitute.
That's rough.
Going from known as one of the best AD carries in EU, one of the best Draven players in EU for that, in terms of one of the best Draven players we've seen in Europe, constantly banned against him, to a sub on a Turkish team.
Yeah.
We'd like to hold an EU eulogy for Freeze. Rip his wrist.
Yes.
Rip his career.
Yes.
I honestly want to see him do well, but at the same time, this is so rough for him.
Let's have a moment of silence. All right, not that long because we have to keep the show rolling. So, last thing we want to talk about, and it's a doozy. It's gonna be the Bruiser quote unquote item changes.
So, also known as Riot, what are you doing?
I mean, to be fair, some of the changes aren't that bad, but then we have the Spear of Slojan, and you tested it yesterday, so tell us the results of your rigorous testing.
So yeah, we've done some rigorous testing, myself and Magical. We went into some bot games, custom games where we put bots in to test out the passive, again, not only against each other, but when you're surrounded by multiple people, you can get the damage reduction on it. We worked out that at roughly 25 minutes, the amount of items you'd have about then 25 to 30 minutes, it's giving you the equivalent of 120 armor. Because it's reducing your damage by an additional 30% to roughly a 25 to 30%, up to a 66% damage reduction on 300 damage auto attack, which is just assuming that's roughly around the damage that somebody's going to be doing there, 300 per hit. So that's the equivalent of a Thornmail's armor plus 40. That's the Thornmail plus Ninja Tabi worth of armor for one item, which is giving you 65 AD. It's giving you a 200 health and 10% CDR. And if you're surrounded by 3 people, it triples that damage reduction. And it scales with AD even further than that. So we tested that out on Fiora versus Jhin. It got to the point where we tested it, so we had both of us with Spear of Sojin, and it was actually fairly even. Because Jhin scales, his AD being so high, having 1000 AD scales really well with this item. He was going 1v1 with a Fiora in the late game and able to genuinely hold his own. Fiora was still winning by a small amount. We tested it where Fiora didn't have Spear of Sojin, he destroyed Fiora. We tested it where he didn't have Spear of Sojin and Fiora did, Fiora destroys him instantly.
Yeah.
So it's a polarizing item where if you don't have it, you lose, and if you do have it, you win. It's as simple as that. And this wasn't like we were selling it and then getting no item in response. We had enough gold where we were replacing it with valid items for the build. So, for example, I was selling it and picking up Bloodthirster instead, or a GA, and it was still not even close.
Yeah, and then we had one thing that I recommended is like Spear of Sojin plus Guardian Angel, where the Fiora basically ran in, got like all 4 auto attacks from a Jhin into the face, and was on 2/3 health.
Yeah, I landed all 4 vitals on him, including 2 crits, and from the crits came from the Storm Razor, and I still got him to only 2/3 HP. I built at the point I built Phantom Dancer, GA, Death Stance on top of Spear of Sojin. I took no damage from anybody. The amount of damage reduction you get is absolutely absurd and obscene, and I don't think this item can go to live in its current form. It's too strong on some ADCs that don't want to get busted, so 50 damage reduction from all sources, and if you're jumped on by 3 people, that becomes roughly 200 to 150 to 200 damage reduction from all sources just in the mid game. And in the late game, that's like 300 damage reduction from all sources. And
the problem also is that was kind of optimal testing, optimal
testing environment where it was literally just 1v1.
What I wanted to say is like it was the optimal scenario against the item where you had like Jhin who does like, I don't know, 500 damage per auto attack. If you have a Caitlyn building like Storm Razor crit.
So where she's actually doing a lot of auto attacks at less damage than Jhin, then you're reducing even more damage, dramatically so. And no one can hit you. No one can hurt you whatsoever.
And this is where I have to say, like, flat damage reduction is, I think, one of the stupidest idea I've seen in quite some time. It's basically any small amounts of damage are not even coming through. And even the big amount of damage, like, if you try to burst somebody, even the burst isn't going through. And in the end, you can't burst people down anymore because the item is that highly scaled. But even if it was small enough, all of the small amounts of damage aren't coming through. So,
are you fed up of being killed by Syndra ultimate?
Are you fed up of being killed at all?
Are you fed up of each ball doing 100 damage to you? Then reduce its damage by 100 per ball.
Yeah,
hello.
And then. Like, just look at some of the tank matchups in the top lane now. It's ridiculous where an Ornn comes in. Of course,
his W does ticks, rather than just one instance of damage. Yeah. So that becomes each tick reduced by a certain amount.
Yeah, and it basically reminds me a lot of like what Bramblevest used to do to bruisers. It's basically reverse Bramblevest now, where if you have this item, you're not going to lose to tanks at all anymore. Like a tank, you can ignore tanks at that point, which is
it's funny. One of the funniest things to me is that it means that Sunfire Cape, because it's 1/3 effective against AOE. 1/3 effective against damage over time, but it still means that with the Sunfire Cape, mid game you're taking 0 damage from that. That doesn't do any damage to you. That's not even incidental damage you're taking from that.
I think this is kind of the definition of game breaking.
Yeah, I think this is an item that everybody should be building. And, but we could look at some of the other items as well, like Atma's Reckoning. It's the new Atma's. You get 25 damage, 30 armor, 30 magic resist. And if you've got 3k health, then after 5 seconds, slowly ticking up, you get 75 AD.
Yeah.
So that gives you 100 AD from that one item. If you're playing, say, Darius, 100 AD after 5 seconds of fighting, yeah, you'll take that any day.
And I kind of think that's a good thing to happen. It basically separates two types of bruisers, which is the Juggernauts they brought in season 5 really, and the how they call the normal bruisers, the more assassin-y bruisers like
the divers,
like Camille, like Fiora, like
Aurelia,
the duelists. You could also call them.
The name for them is divers, and they also include Kali and Diana in that pool. And
I kind of think that's a good decision, because you finally have an item difference between them, so you can even buff Juggernauts individually just by buffing their items. So you have the divers building like Ravenous into Spear into Guardian Angel or something of that variety. And you have the Juggernauts going for Atmos into maybe Spear or something else, and kind of building off from there.
Yeah, because you can go like Black Cleaver. You can build your tankier items, give you more health.
Yeah.
And they just buff up the Atmos, and you can still get all that armor and magic resist that you want.
Yeah.
So it can be great for you there. But another thing that I find really interesting is because of the way they've managed to balance these items now, they can nerf some items in one way so it affects one champion but buffs others. And the Sterix is what I want to talk about in terms of this. So they've changed Sterix from giving you 50% bonus base AD. So that would count towards Triforce procs.
Yeah.
Buff the damage you get from Triforce procs massively. Really strong on champions like Aurelia. Some players play Warwick with Triforce, but Jax as well, who builds the Triforce Sterix. Yeah, Hecarim, obviously, who builds Triforce as well. But what is now happening, where they've changed it from bonus base AD to bonus AD, is it's nerfing Triforce users, but it also is buffing champions like, say, again, I'm going to go back to Darius here, who he gets that shield when you go low to get that extra survivability, you get the lifesteal at that point, you get bonus AD when you go low. And it gives you the ability to have an item that scales to your ability, as it didn't previously. So it's perfect to be able to get to that point in the game where you can go in the middle of 3 or 4 people and just be a big bruiser. And again, it's separating the items, where you've got the bursty champions who want to build Triforce plus Sterix and try and one-shot somebody, and the people who want to go into the backline, slowly stack up, fight in the middle of 4 people, and have the survivability.
I think, apart from Spear of Sojin, this is a good change, but the Spear of Sojin can... First of all, it can't go live with the stats it has right now, but honestly, I don't like the concept to begin with. So
I think I like the concept in theory that you have some more survivability in fights.
I think
it should be one, it should be percentage damage reduction, and 2, it should be an active, not just something that's active permanent.
Yeah. That's that, and then it's relatively fair, I think. Yeah, I want to see it changed. I don't want to see it go live this way. I honestly, I even contemplated being like, okay, if this goes live, we're gonna disregard that period of competitive play, because basically, it's so exclusionary. It's like, as you said, it's kind of fair if you have like everybody building the item. Yeah. But it excludes so many champions. At the same time, it really messes up the balance of the game, where a diver can't burst down a Jhin anymore.
Yeah.
Can't kill...
I should have been, legitimately, once he sold Spear of Sojin, I was two-shotting him. Just about two-shotting.
Yeah, it's...
With Spear of Sojin, I couldn't do any damage to him.
Yeah, it's... It kind of reminds me of a game called Gigantic, where everybody, like, the kill time was like, if you wanted to kill somebody, 3 people had to focus one hero for 5 seconds to kill them, and that's kind of what I see happening here right now. And it's crazy. And of course, AP champions can't can't really survive anymore. Like just put down Anivia. It's just a slow at that point. It's just a slow. The Anivia ult. It's ridiculous.
It's just the fact that it removes incidental damage so well. So you see somebody taking like 200 damage from a Morgana W because it just happens to be in the way of them in a team fight. That's gone. You take maybe 50 damage from that now.
Or nothing.
Or nothing, yeah, because
if they don't.
The thing is, it's still 1/3 effectiveness. So if you're removing 60 damage, that becomes 20. If it's 20 per tick,
yeah, but
if it's any more than 20 per tick, it's still a fair amount.
I mean, if they don't max it, it's relatively weak, to be fair.
Yeah. It's still just the idea that there's like Anivia ult is still gonna, unless you're in the middle of 3 people, still gonna be doing a few hundred damage to you. It's just gonna be doing significantly less because per tick, reducing it by 20 and say per tick it's doing 100. That's still 20% damage reduction.
Mm-hmm.
That's still incredible amounts of damage reduction you're getting from one item. That still gives you that much AD, cooldown reduction, and health. That isn't that expensive either.
Yeah. One thing that I also would maybe see is like the problem with the spear as well is it scales also relatively well with resistances. So I actually do think Atmos and that combined is going to be a really strong combination. Because
so as the fight goes longer, you get more resistances as well.
Yeah, and
you're
basically unkillable at some point. And
no.
You know what a Darius can do if he's not being killed, you know?
Oh, well, that actually sounds interesting. I'll have to test out as well. But yeah, this is really interesting to see where this can go.
Interesting, but maybe not desirable.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Anyway,
that just about wraps it up. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 hour 30 this time, so we got through all of that a bit quicker this time.
Yeah, a bit quicker. Didn't have as much to talk about. Not
Fair
the
enough,
entire group stage to cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be back in a couple weeks.
In a couple of weeks with a pre-season show. We we're thinking about in 2 weeks, but I think maybe 3 weeks would be better because as far as I know, the season starts at like the 25th.
Right. So 3 weeks does sound optimal. Yeah, we can look to try and get a guest on for that one. And
I know Magical wanted to get on.
Yeah, so we'll probably just throw him in there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Goodbye.